All right, welcome in beachside here, just outside. No, I mean Media Alta, Puerto Rico, close to Camarero Racetrack. Why not? Let's go. It's a holiday edition for me, at least, of BloodHorse Monday, episode 3. Sean Collins hanging out, not so holidayish for you, my friend.
No, not at all. You're looking out, seeing the beach. I'm looking out and just seeing snow on my balcony. So we're in two different areas.
You and I were talking before the show, and I all I said was, my whole life, we've gone on, since I've had kids, we try to get out once a year. Big trip, this kind of stuff. We love Puerto Rico. Love the people down here, obviously. And then just usually the weather in Louisville, for some reason, gets warm the second I leave. So I apologize this time. Usually, folks, I'm good at setting up good weather. Not this time. So there you go. Hopefully the snow will pass very soon. It is President's Day, of course, racing around the country. We had the Clásico Jorge Washington here at Camarero yesterday, the old George Washington Classic. Little grade 3 for 3-year-olds down here yesterday. But of course, we had a bunch of Derby preps as well, Sean, on the Kentucky Derby trail, if you will. Slightly different trail than the old Jorge Washington trail down here. But man, I thought some standout performances for sure. A classic finish in the Sunland Derby that we'll probably talk a lot about for a long time, frankly, because of the connections and all of that sort of thing. And especially if one of those two shows up really big on the first Saturday in May, for sure we'll go back to that. But just sort of lasting impressions from the weekend, Sean, before we get into the replays.
Well, I think one of the keys here for the races, especially we'll talk about the Risen Star, but who showed up and who didn't show up in that race. There's kind of two different stories that we had coming out of that race. But we had the big names back in it, the Bafferts, the Lucas, the Asmusens getting on the Derby trail with these horses. But we also had some of those kind of underneath spots, some of those smaller names pop up. So everything that you want heading into the first Saturday in May. We're 75 days away today, Louie. We're getting close.
75 is a number I can wrap my head around. That's real. That's a thing. When we started this, what was it, 89 or something at Churchill Downs? Windiest day in the history of the track. No, like it's just all kinds of stuff going on that way. So yeah, 75. Boy, yeah, we're past the 50-point. We've broken the seal on the 50-pointers as well in that Risen Start. So let's go ahead and watch that one. John Dooley on the call down there at the fairgrounds.
The half mile. 46.92 seconds for Magnitude coming toward the quarter pole as Built is building momentum now for Luis Saez, and East Avenue is running in third but under pressure. They straighten for home past the quarter pole. It's Magnitude. 3/4 in 1 minute 10.95 seconds. Magnitude coming down toward the final furlong. Holds a 3-4 length lead on Built. And then American Promise into third. Chunk of Gold is in fourth. East Avenue is well defeated here at the fairgrounds today by Magnitude, who just keeps on rolling for Ben Curtis home. It's Magnitude. Magnitude at 43-1. Wire to wire in the Risen Star. Second close, Chunk of Gold with Built.
Oh, man, when you talk about exactly what you would like your horse to do over a mile and an eighth, Magnitude did just that. A very Baffert-esque performance by a 3-year-old there. Sean, obviously out of the Asmussen barn. We heard from him in the fall about this horse. He loved this horse in the fall. Wasn't sure he was going to be his top 3-year-old, but, man, he loved this horse. Finally showed exactly what he wanted. And, by the way, from the outside post, Ben Curtis, hustling up to that first turn, knew what he needed to do with this horse. Plenty of leg left at the finish too, Sean.
Yeah, this, there's multiple ways that you can look at this race for, from the connection standpoint. Ben Curtis got his first ride in the Kentucky Derby last year on Honor Marie. He's just moved over from riding in Europe, and he's already having the success. That was a fantastic ride. He and Steve both mentioned after the race, they kind of got together. They saw how the racetrack was playing. It seemed like speed on the inside was where you wanted to be during the day at Fairgrounds. And he rode that to perfection. He broke the gate, just sent him up there. I watched an interview with him after the race, Ben Curtis, and he mentioned about how he was kind of able to get Magnitude to come back to him, give him a breather. And Steve Asmussen had him ready. This horse has, he's had a couple of performances on the Derby trail where he hasn't shown up in the Iroquois, in the Lecomte Stakes, but he had him ready today. He's developing at the right time. You just knew at some point Steve was going to have the horse that finally broke through, got him back on the Derby trail as he still searches for that first win.
I was going to say, man, for a guy like that, and, I'm a fortunate guy. I get to do shows like this, and, Sean, you get to interview trainers and you meet these guys, and this is a get up early profession. This is a 7-day-a-week profession for those guys. So you have to imagine there's a fair amount of allowing themselves to dream about that Derby winner circle and those things. And Steve Asmus, all-time leading his trainer in North America, it gives you an idea of how difficult it is to get a horse all the way to the Derby gate and have him win the darn thing as well, or her, and win the thing. And so it is fun to watch these because, you know, when you're around this and you get to do what we do, you meet guys like Steve, and he just, you know, he's just trying to win races, and he just doesn't have the Derby on his resume just as of yet. Big old speed figure, big old performance there, Sean. I mean, are we going to overreact to this come Derby Day, you think?
I don't know. This is one of those ones where, like last year when Mystic Dan ran so well in the Southwest, kind of up on the lead, and he ran away. That was one that I didn't think it was as good as it actually was. Turned out a couple months later, I was completely wrong.
Right.
So I don't want to 100% say, you know, that this is not going to be, you know, one of the, you know, this could very well just be a 3-year-old who's taking that step forward. He's developing, he's figuring it out. And now, you know, the last couple prep races, and we'll see it again here in the Sunland Derby when we talk about that one, there's been a lot of speed horses that have been winning some of these prep races recently.
That's right.
So at some point, you're going to have to look at who's going to be the pace setter in the Derby. It's going to get too quick up there on the pace. And I would like to see, you know, from him next time out, seeing him now kind of use this newfound skill to set off the pace a little bit, see if he's the same horse. Was it the Golden Rail? Was it the racetrack that helped him out today? Or is he just a good horse that's peaking at the right time? We'll have to find out in his next start.
Fair amount of good evidence that if there was a track bias, it wasn't overwhelming on Saturday at Fairgrounds. And so I do think this stands up on its own as a good performance. One thing that you mentioned, Sean, that Ben Curtis did say in the post-race comments that I really like, that I like to hear from jockeys, which is, yeah, we got out quick because I asked him. But when I asked him to calm down in the back, you know, after the first turn on the backside, whatever, he did it. And he was able to get that little bit of a breather, like you mentioned, slow down those fractions a little bit, get closer to 24, or maybe a little bit over when you can on those kinds of splits. I always look for that with 3-year-olds. If they're able to be coached that way, if they're pros in that way, if they understand go, or hey, we need to chill out for just a minute. Some of our favorite horses, Sean, only have one speed, and that's just go as fast as they can. They go 5.5, 6, whatever, and they're good to go. And we're talking about the Derby. We're talking about 10 furlongs. And that was a great performance over 1 1/8. Obviously, we got to stretch out going forward for him, but we'll get a good sense of that in the Louisiana Derby, of course. Running 1 3/16, the longest of the Kentucky Derby preps as well. That'll be up in a month. Another race at the Fairgrounds this weekend was the Rachel Alexandra, another grade 2 on the card there in the first 50-point prep for the Oaks Field. Turned into a 25-point prep. I want to ask you about that, Sean, because I have some thoughts about that. But we do get a nice return from another Brad Cox filly here on the trail. It is, again, John Dooley at the Fairgrounds on the call.
Brian Hernandez Jr. Goal's Delight remains the target for Aladdin and Bless the Broken. Coming up 3 wide. And Good Cheer toward the inside. Is 2 lengths off of Goal's Delight as they come toward the top of the stretch. Goal's Delight, Aladdin, Bless the Broken, Good Cheer in the Royal Blue. 3/4 for Goal's Delight. 1 minute 13.19 seconds. Good Cheer is now coming after Goal's Delight. 1 furlong to go. And here's Good Cheer. It's Good Cheer who's taken the lead. Just outside the 16th pole, the Louie Saez. Goal's Delight is second, and Good Cheer is sailing clear to make it 5 for 5. Good Cheer in the Rachel Alexandra Stakes, won by a half dozen lengths from Goal's Delight.
We just saw recently at bloodhorse.com, of course, go check out the website. Our colleague Frank Angst was writing about how important it is, especially on the colt side, to come back with your debut run at 3 to be a good one. It's less of an indicator on the filly side, but Sean, this is exactly what I wanted to see from her. Frankly, it was a very untechnical ride from Louie Saez, and I'm not picking on him. He knew he had the best horse here. It goes ahead and just says, you know what, let's sit right here. And I love this move right here. He doesn't force anything. He just knows he's got the fastest horse who has the most energy left. Goes ahead and passes this field. Obviously knocked down to 4 from 7 starters in the gate, Sean. So, look, she was the best of this group of 4. Frankly, she was probably the best of the group of 7 as well. What'd you like about here?
Oh, I love this performance. I think I mentioned on the show last week, and you know that this is probably my Kentucky Oaks horse. I really liked her as a 2-year-old, and you don't always see those fillies that are top 2-year-olds come back and be that dominant again as a 3-year-old. Who's Your Filly's one that pops in my mind, kind of in the same race. Just a few years ago, she was running in the same race as Good Cheer has been running in, and she didn't make that step forward. So we talked about the track bias that was potentially there. She obviously played against that bias coming from off the
right. Great point.
The only question was going to be, was she going to be able to find room to run? She was very relaxed in the early stages, waiting for that spot to open. Once it opened up, she was there. She punched through and just coasted. I mean, you look at her coming down the stretch there right at the end, and I mean, she was not really putting up any effort. It seemed like she was just kind of galloping away from them. I would have loved to see what would have happened with Simply Joking staying in that race.
Yeah, I agree
that we lost her, but I think this is the horse to beat for the Kentucky Oaks, at least at this point.
Yeah, I talked to Whit Beckman on Wednesday. She was running as of Wednesday, so obviously something popped up with her where she was unable to go in Simply Joking. But look, this is a Brad Cox specialty. We expect 3-year-olds, and especially on the filly side, to be great in his barn this time of year. No surprises there. We see the blue silks. We know what that means as well. So all of it sets up, Sean, I totally agree with you that she is going to be a massive player on that first Friday in May when we get to Churchill Downs. Interested to see her next steps. She obviously needs another race here. It places her 6 weeks out from the Oaks. Do you think that's too much time, or do you think that's the route they'll just stay on here?
I think that's the route they'll stay on. I know Brad probably doesn't want to move her around too much from Louisiana, and she's the top dog down there. Why move her to a different track? I think probably that Fairgrounds Oaks would be your next bet, and then that gives her. That's scary to think that she's going to have a full 6 weeks rest going into the Kentucky Oaks.
Maybe. Yeah, and then she could be second off the layoff there for the Acorn, which is crazy to think about as well.
Yep.
Sean Collins, Louie Rabaut hanging out with you. Another BloodHorse Monday. It's episode 3. We are split screen because I am on an island and Sean is not. So there you are. You know what? Something I love about this show so far is we keep getting great finishes in these Kentucky Derby preps. Not so much with magnitude, except that it was a wow performance. At least we got that part for sure. But let's head out to Sunland Park, Sean. We got a matchup of a Baffert and a coach in a Lucas. I mean, these two. This is now twice in 6 months we've had this kind of finish up.
Yeah, classic showdown. You love to see it every single time.
You do.
You always wonder which one of them is going to get the edge. This time it went Baffert's way, but man, was that an exciting race!
So let's have
a strong, good-looking move from Caldera. Caldera means business, and he's bearing down on Getaway Car. Caldera looks to have his measure. Caldera with a sweeping move. Getaway Car's going to have to find something more and find it quickly. Touchy is third, straightening away into the long Sunland Park stretch. It is Caldera for Dwayne Lucas leading a neck, fighting back. Getaway Car will not give up. Getaway Car vigilant on the inside. Getaway Car coming back. Getaway Car, Caldera, throw down in an awesome finish. Was it Getaway Car?
Oh my God!
Stop from smiling watching that again.
Eric Alwad on the call out there at Sunland Park. Appreciate Eric's call there. The excitement. I know everyone has their opinions on track announcers and all the different things. It's one of my favorite parts of the sport that they're all so different in different parts of the country, calling races differently. An awesome finish. Oh, yes, it was an awesome finish. Thank you, Eric. You're right. Yes, it was an awesome finish.
And seeing a track like Sunland have their day in the sun with such a great finish with those small tracks when they have the big races and it provides this excitement like this, it can't get any better than that.
I'm with you. Nice handle yesterday as well. So good to see, or 2 days ago, I should say, good to see bettors discovering Sunland out there as well. Sean, look, this is a prep that we overlook. I think we've had some really good runners come out of this historically. Yeah. This is another classic Baffert that gets the lead, and when he needs to be, kicking along, he does. We get the Lucas trainee on the outside. I mean, going forward, obviously, we'll see one of these in Arkansas, one of these in Santa Anita, whatever it might be. But man, I think if you're part of the connections of both of these horses, or either, I should say, I think you feel pretty good after that race.
Oh yeah, definitely. For Getaway Car, he's been running against Citizen Bull and Gaming, his own stable mates. He's kind of had it in tough, and he hasn't always been given his opportunity to be up on the lead. So to see him get the lead and then have to overcome some adversity down the stretch, I mean, I think Caldera got like a full neck on him at one point and battled back. Yeah. So to see him have that fight is something that, going towards the Derby is something you really want to see, because it's going to be a completely different race. His stable mates are going to be in different portions of the racetrack as well. So, you really kind of want to see him have that fight in him before the first Saturday in May. And Caldera, I mean, he was a horse that, had just broken his maiden out of Oaklawn. He now shows that he can handle shipping. He ran such a great against a
great point.
It's just nothing but upside there. I'm sure there were plenty of my racehorse people in the stands there that were screaming down the stretch, trying to get him home there. I'm sure that was an exciting atmosphere at Sunland yesterday. I saw there were a lot of people on track on TV. And yeah, what a classic horse race.
I always know when I go to look up what, the ownership group on a horse, if a race replay has 80 or more comments, it's a my racehorse was
yeah,
horse
who
was
owns that horse.
No question about it, which is awesome, by the way. It is awesome for our sport that many people have half a toenail or something of a horse, and they feel that connected. They feel that stuff. That's the good stuff, man. It really, really is there. So there's our race replays for the weekend. And by the way, I think you said something really great, which was we got a great finish out of 4 horses in 3 races this weekend. I think all the connections should feel really good about those. Wanted to ask you real quick, do you think it's fair to the connections of that Rachel Alexandra that they did have 7 entered, 4 run, and they only get half the points? How does Sean Collins feel?
Well, it's interesting because this is the first year where we're seeing that point reduction here in the championship series for a smaller number of races. On one end, it makes sense why you do it, because you end up not having as much competition. We've seen in the past horses that have gotten into the Kentucky Derby because, they ended up just getting a bunch of these 3rd place points in 4 or 5 horse fields. And it added up to end up getting them a spot when maybe you'd say they didn't deserve it because of how far back they finished. So it makes sense. I personally don't have a problem with it, but that could change because this is the first time that we have this point system in place. So you don't know what the end result's going to be yet. Is this going to end up keeping a horse that should end up being in the Kentucky Oaks or the Kentucky Derby, who finishes 2nd in one of these races? Is that going to keep them out of the gate? We'll have to wait and see on that aspect. So right now I'm fine with it because, especially in the race yesterday, Good Cheer was definitely kind of head and shoulders above the rest of the field there. But will it stay that way? We'll have to wait and see.
Underrated part of this discussion for me, Sean, is there are 20 spots in the Kentucky Derby. Same number of opportunities, but only 14 for the Oaks. And so it hits different when it hits an Oaks race like this and it hits a horse like Good Cheer. And so I don't know if maybe the Oaks Trail needs to be treated differently than the Derby Trail just because of the number of starters. But that would be my only bone of contention here. I understand why they put this in place. I'm generally speaking not against it. I have this very similar take as you, Sean, but I think on the Oaks side, it is a little different to ask people to only qualify for 14 spots for the premier 3-year-old filly event in the spring, and then tell them, oh yeah, by the way, thanks for putting together 7 horses. And then for taking care of the horses and not running a horse, like just joking or whatever, like something joking, like we shouldn't be penalizing that either. So I don't know. I'm a little bit in the more, but I largely agree with you. Sean Collins, Louie, Rabaut, hanging out with you, episode 3 of BloodHorse Monday. Let's go ahead and get to your interview with Elliott Walden. Can you tell us a little bit about this? I can tell from all the notes you said that you had a great time. You learned a lot. We're going to kind of break this up into different parts, but we'll get the meat of it, if you will, to start here, Sean. So what do you and Elliott talk about?
Yeah, so Elliott Walden is the president, CEO, and racing manager of WinStar Farm. We talked last week about John Hancock, who's a horse of theirs. He won the Sam F. Davis, very, long stretch battle, just like that Sunland Derby that we saw, a very exciting stretch duel that he came out the victor of. And so in this interview, we got Elliott's thoughts kind of on how this horse has developed. I think it was really interesting kind of hearing him talk about when they backed off on this horse. He didn't start until his 3-year-old season. He didn't start as a 2-year-old. And kind of the decision that went into backing off of him as a 2-year-old. And then also, they have a couple other horses, WinStar, that are pointing towards the Derby. Just how winning the Derby a couple of times has led WinStar to kind of, look at the point system and trying to get the qualifying points a little bit differently than maybe someone else, where you want to make sure you don't just get a horse in the Derby, you want to get a horse that has a chance to win the Derby. And so I think that's some great insight that he was able to give us.
Oh, that's awesome. And by the way, we're going to have these kinds of interviews for you every single week here. And of course, you can find them as well at bloodhorse.com. Make sure you pop over there to check out all the great things happening on the website as well. We'll get into it with Eric Mitchell after that. We'll do a little Stallion of the Week with him as well. And by the way, we'll have him comment on some of the Elliott Walden stuff as well. But here's Sean's interview with Elliott Walden.
We'd like to welcome into the show today Elliott Walden, the president, CEO, and racing manager of WinStar Farm, who co-owns John Hancock, winner of the Sam F. Davis Stakes on the road to the Kentucky Derby. Elliott, we're 75 days away from the Kentucky Derby. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's get started talking about John Hancock. It was such an impressive win in the Sam Davis. He lost the lead in the middle of the stretch. He battled back on the inside and came back and defeated Owen Almighty. From your perspective as the owner, how exciting is that moment seeing him kind of dig in and come back?
Yeah, it was great. He really stepped up. Anytime you go from one turn to two turns, you don't know how they're going to respond. He just had one race. So, one of the biggest jumps in horse racing is going from a maiden race, all non-winners, to all winners. And, to see him battle a horse that's pretty proven, tested in Owen Almighty, he'd had plenty of starts, and for him to fend him off and really fight down to the wire was a great thing.
And WinStar is not only the co-owners of the colt, but they also bred the colt. He's a son of your stallion Constitution. We'll talk about Constitution more in a moment, but what stood out to you early on about John Hancock, kind of as he developed from a foal into a racehorse?
John Hancock was kind of a middle of the road, physical, well balanced, very athletic. But not the biggest horse. And so, he was very uncomplicated as a foal and an early yearling. And, we had him in the sale. Didn't feel like he was going to, break out, and that he was $200,000, $300,000 yearling. And so at that point, we felt like that the best thing to do would be to try him in our racing stable. So, typically how we handle those is if they're really good colts and they're really, can break out, we'll sell them. We sell our best. But if some of the middle of the road type horses that the market might go by, we will try them in our racing stable and try for another day.
And he's trained by Brad Cox, one of the top trainers in the United States. What was his early impressions of the horse as he kind of got into training, and how excited was he for seeing this horse's career unfold?
Well, I think he's very excited now. I think, early on the horse had trained very well here at WinStar for us. Not setting any records or anything, but just a solid, nice horse that we kind of grouped as is right at the bottom of our top level, maybe at the top of our B level kind of horse. And, so an exciting prospect. We sent him to Brad, in quite honestly, he didn't show a whole lot early on in training. He got outworked at Keeneland a couple times out of the gate, just didn't really put it all together. And so Brad called me one day, and he had moved him to Ellis, and we had talked about that, and he was getting ready to run. And Brad said, look, I like this horse. I think he has some talent. He has a good way of moving, but he just hadn't put it all together yet. Let's send him home and just let him grow up. And so that's what we did. Instead of, the other option would have been to maybe run him for 100, even like Burnham Square did. Sometimes these horses don't just get off the mark right away. And patience is a virtue. And Brad is good at that. Brad is good at trying to get he jokes all the time. He likes to slip into Planet Fitnesses around the country, and he says that's a no judgment zone. And so when these horses are two, in April, May, June, July, it's a no judgment zone on them, and let them just grow and develop, and then see what we have. And boy, I'm sure glad we did that, because when he came back, he was a bigger, stronger horse. He had put it together mentally. When I saw him train over the winter at Payson Park, I could see a difference in him and just his whole demeanor to training. He was very enthusiastic about it. He wanted to go out there every day and perform. He was confident in himself. And so we then had Tappan Street, and we had another horse named River Thames for Todd that we were running at Gulfstream. So around the same time, and instead of waiting for the next maiden race at Gulfstream, we talked to Brad about going to Tampa, and he ran very well that day. He ran a good number, and so we were kind of on our way at that point.
A lot of people put pressure on these horses early to kind of make the Triple Crown because of how important that is. You guys took that step back with John Hancock, kind of let him develop. You yourself, you're a Belmont Stakes winning trainer. You finished second in the Derby a couple of times. Does having that experience as a trainer kind of help you as a racing manager when the trainer does come to you with that decision?
It does. It does. And I think the other thing, John, is just, I'm of the opinion, right or wrong, and probably because we've been blessed to win the Derby twice and have had some success in the Triple Crown, to really focus on not chasing points. You hear conversations all the time, oh, I got to get points, or this race is worth this, this, and this. I'm a believer that the horse is going to take you there, and because we've had success there, we don't want to just run to run. We want to show up with horses that can run well. So take a horse like Tappan Street. He's run twice, ran very well in his first start at Gulfstream, ran very well in the Holy Bull first time around 2 turns, similar to John Hancock. We're waiting for the Florida Derby, and all the points are going to be in one race. So either he's going to run first or second and earn his way to the Derby in that spot, or he's not. But we're not going to run him back in the Fountain of Youth in 4 weeks and then back again trying to get 10 points here and 20 points there and try to get in the Derby. We're going to try to take one big swing at it and do what we think's best for a horse that's young and developing. John Hancock is the same thing. We could have run him back in the Tampa Bay Derby, thinking about points, thinking about, oh, we run him there, then we can run him back again. But I think we're going to find another race in that last round of preps to see how he develops and give him a chance to catch his breath a little bit, because he did run back fairly quickly there. He did put in a big effort, and we'll just wait and see where we land with him. Not sure yet.
And you also mentioned River Thames earlier. I believe he's planning to come up in the Fountain of Youth Stakes, correct?
Yeah, River Thames is going to run in the Fountain of Youth. A little different scenario just because he has not had any experience around 2 turns. So, we are going to run him back in 4 weeks in the Fountain of Youth, and then probably run him again in the Florida Derby or the Bluegrass or the Arkansas Derby or the Wood, something like that, just because he has not had any starts around 2 turns. A lot of it depends on how he runs in the Fountain of Youth, and kind of felt like a mile and the 16th was the right next step for him.
Another of your top 3-year-olds, Patch Adams, he had such an impressive maiden victory at Churchill Downs. He came back, he was 4th in the Southwest Stakes. What's next for him? Kind of what's the plans going forward with him?
Looking at the Tampa Bay Derby as a landing spot for him. The Fountain of Youth was considered as well, just because he's back in Florida. We traveled him once to Oak Lawn. Don't want to do too much traveling. But I think because he ran late January, ran okay, but didn't put forth the kind of effort that we were hoping, then, we kind of got to see him run again and get more experience. It wasn't a bad race, but when you're 4-5 or 3-5 and finish 4th, it is a tick disappointing. But if you go back and look at it, the ground broke out from underneath him leaving there, and he got further back than he wanted. He got some dirt in his face around the first turn, and he started climbing and hit the first time that he'd ever been in that position where he was getting kicked back. So I think he learned a lot from it, and came on, finished 4th, got beat 2.5 lengths.
So plenty of talent on the racetrack, also plenty of talent in the breeding shed, one of those being John Hancock, Sire Constitution. Very talented colt himself on the racetrack, a 2-time Grade 1 winner, Florida Derby winner. What was it about Constitution that drew WinStar's interest at first, and how has his career kind of unfolded for you guys?
Well, he's been phenomenal. We raced him with our good friends Steve Davison and Randy Gallot at Twin Creeks. We bought him as a yearling together. He was a very talented horse. He won the Florida Derby, looked like one of the favorites for the Kentucky Derby, and came up with a little shin fracture. And so we had to give him 6 months and got him back, and he comes back and wins the Dawn. So he showed a tremendous amount of talent on the racetrack, had really good speed, came from a very good family out of a distorted humor mare. And, we're excited about him as a stallion. We got him in, had a good book of mares without, at a mid-level. We kind of stood him in that 20 range. And he just outperformed once his horses hit the racetrack. He just kept coming with runner after runner after runner. Tis the Law and Independence Hall, who we stand here as well. We're in his first crop. Independence Hall is a horse that we're excited about. Hopefully can follow in his father's footsteps. And Tis the Law's done well over at Coolmore. So, exciting to have Sons of Constitution now in the pipeline, and hopefully John Hancock's another one.
What are the top things when breeders are talking to you about Constitution? What are some of those top qualities that they really like about him?
I think there's two things. One that really I go to what the racehorse trainers, who we have relationships with, say about him, and that's their grit. They're really competitive. They really want to try. They're very active. Sometimes a little quirky. Sometimes they don't breeze the best. I've heard that, that they're not just morning glories, but you put them in the gate in the afternoon, they're very competitive. So that's one. Two is his balance and his athleticism. They're forward type horses. When the gate breaks, they're wanting to be up close or be involved. They're not plotters or slow horses that get up late. Most of the time they're active. They're really well balanced. They're athletic and they're active.
And it seems like those qualities have definitely passed on to John Hancock here. Now, as you look towards the Kentucky Derby, WinStar, you've won it twice in recent years, Super Saver in 2010, Justify in 2018. Is there a moment from one of those derbies that kind of stands out to you, whether it be on Derby Day itself, whether it be in the lead up or after the race? Is there kind of a moment that you always look back on as your favorite Derby memory?
Well, I guess one thing that I will say is if it rains, we're not going to worry, because Super Saver won it in the mud and Justify won it in the mud. You always worry about every little detail, and you worry about a safe racetrack, and we've had two of our finer moments on a sloppy racetrack on the first Saturday in May. So that's one thing we don't have to worry about. But just the excitement of it, the ability to share it with so many people is, it really is special. And it's a very special part of our business that owners this time of year, whether it's the people who ran in the Risen Star or the people that are going to run the Fountain of Youth next week or out in California, and everybody's dreaming about the Kentucky Derby and hoping their horse can take them there. And that's a real, just a real great thing about our industry. And it doesn't matter if you're WinStar. This year, we have a good chance with a few horses. Godolphin, another top outfit, probably the top outfit, has a great chance with very good horses. But you also got the little guy, and got one horse that found their way to getting in these races, and who knows who could show up at Louisville on the first Saturday in May. So it really does bring together all facets of the industry, and the dream is alive in 75 days before the race.
And if it ends up raining on that day, we know what happened. They were doing a rain dance up at WinStar Farm to try to help them out get to the winner's circle. But we mentioned Justify, the Triple Crown winner from 2018. John Hancock, like Justify, you guys co-own with CHC, the China Horse Club. This partnership's been going on for a couple years now. What has led to this partnership being so successful?
Well, I think partnerships are successful when there's not an undue pressure put on it. So many times when you get good horses, like we've had Justify with CHC, we've had Life is Good with CHC, and we have these 3-year-olds that we've talked about already with CHC. There all becomes a lot of pressure. There becomes a lot of expectations. Our relationship with Mr. T.O. King and his family has been just a real blessing. They know that we're doing the best we can to help find these horses and help create a vibrant partnership, and they're supportive of that. They help in that area. CHC has Michael Smith and Christy DeBarnis here in America that help oversee their interests, and but the fact that we're able to work together and pull in one direction has really helped, and I think that's a big part of keeping a partnership together for a long time and being successful at the same time.
Well, Valentine's Day was just a couple of days ago. I know love is in the air out there in Kentucky right now as breeding season is beginning. You guys have 3 very new, exciting stallions at WinStar, Cogburn, Timberlake, and Heartland. What has the breeders' reception been to these 3 so far?
Well, it's been great. All 3 are going to have good, solid books. Cogburn is the most popular of the 3 because of his speed and being by knot this time, and just a really exciting horse. They all have gotten off to a good start in the breeding shed. Timberlake has got a good book. We're sitting on about 150 mares and probably going to breed a 160, 170 to him, I would say, we're excited about him and the fact that he was such a great 2-year-old, and he's a really big horse with a really deep family behind him. And, so I think there's a lot of reasons he fits a lot of the profile of what we like in a stallion, and the fact that he had really good 2-year-old form and a great deep family behind him, and he's behind the mischief. So what can you say there? And then Heartland, to win one race and to just only have that one chance to really show what he was capable of because of his injury. We had to tell a story, and the breeders have received him extremely well. Again, he's going to breed probably in the 140 range, I would say. And for a horse that just made one start in a maiden race, I think that's pretty incredible. So people can see, we really believe in all 3. Heartland is a horse that we've had to tell the story on a little bit just because of the fact that he only ran one time. But he and Timberlake were by far our 2 best 2-year-olds of that crop. What Timberlake did, being a grade 1 winner at 2 and a grade 2 winner at 3. So Heartland was right there with him, and we know that. And I think, people understand that. And then you have examples like Malibu Moon and McLean's Music, who kind of done the same thing, had brief careers, but showed extreme talent, and they made it as stallions. So that's why we felt like bringing Heartland to the table was the right thing to do. I know there's people out there that really don't like the fact he made one start, but sometimes things happen, and we were able to see talent from a very early stage with him. Everybody that dealt with him realized the talent he had. And like I said, he and Timberlake were our 2 best 2-year-olds of the year, and both of them deserve to be in the stallion barn.
And he's definitely got a good pedigree. I'm sure you guys were excited to get a son of Justify in your breeding show.
Very much. And he's a half to a 2-year-old champion in Classic Empire. So real excited about all 3, and can't wait to see babies hit the ground next year and see where they take us.
All right. Well, thank you for taking the time with us here, Elliott. I really appreciate it. And best of luck to you and your team throughout the rest of the Triple Crown Trail.
Thank you so much.
Thanks to Elliott Walden, all the folks over there at WinStar for joining us there in that segment. Sean, great job on the interview. You have turned into, I'm a little worried about my spot on this show. Nice job, Sean. You did a good job.
You're fine. Don't worry.
I don't know if you're like me. Do you read any of the articles about like when teams go to like you're like a Yankees fan. They only wear 2 uniforms. That's what they wear, this kind of stuff. But other teams get like a 3rd uniform and they try, like in the NBA, they have the city look and those kinds of things. I think we could do an episode on silks.
Oh yeah.
And it would get huge numbers. WinStar, by the way, beautiful. They're great. Yeah. All right. We'll leave it at that. Great interview. I thought a couple of things really stood out when someone of that stature, who's had Derby winners, who's had, you mentioned Elliott Walden, trained a Belmont winner. When you say things like we don't stress the points, right? They really just let the horse guide them, and you see the success. I love hearing that because it really does point to good horsemanship, and then you figure it out as it goes. Doesn't hurt to start with good pieces either, right? I mean, that part's okay too. But talking about the grit of Constitution, those kinds of things, not always fast. No, the grit, like wanting to win, those sorts of things. Really interesting. Good stuff, Sean.
Yeah, it was a great insight from Elliott. Definitely somebody who's been at the top of the game multiple times before. And just being able to kind of hear the different philosophies from people on how they've had success, I think, is always just a benefit.
Yeah. Speaking of stallions, let's bring in Eric Mitchell, our guest for the week, here on BloodHorse Monday. BloodHorse guest for the week. How about that? There he is. Hey, Eric. Good afternoon. Yes, afternoon, Eric. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Can y'all hear me all right?
We can. You sound great. You look even better. Okay. How about that? All right. Very jealous of that great mop of hair you got there. All right, Eric. I wanted to have you in for our Stallion of the Week segment here. So glad you could join us here on BloodHorse Monday. Louie, Rabaut, Sean Collins hanging out with you for this part of the show and for all of the shows here at BloodHorse Monday. Man, we had a couple of standouts this weekend. Where did you land on your Stallion of the Week?
Yeah, there was a couple choices that we had, I think, and we landed on Not This Time. Tailor-made Stallions, Sire of that runaway winner Magnitude, 9 3/4 lengths win, very, very impressive horse, and this has been a very impressive stallion. I mean, Not This Time. I mean, he wasn't the leading sire his freshman year, but after that, he has been the leader of his sire class, 2nd, 3rd, 4th crop. He just keeps going from strength to strength. He's a son of Giants Causeway. We know that horse, one of the premier stallions worldwide. So Not This Time. He's 5th on the leading sires list by money, but he's tied with Into Mischief with 3 graded stakes winners so far this year. So good company for him to be in.
That's right. Yeah.
Not This Time. Stains at TaylorMade for $175,000 this year, and I think a lot of people think he's worth every dollar. So
I didn't hear any complaining when it was 110 for a while. So yeah, I'm sure 175 with these results.
That's right.
Fits right in, Eric, for sure. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to watch this, this development of these sires. Sometimes, like you said, that second class is different than the fourth class, what have you. But with these, with these sorts of runs and this sort of exposure with a Magnitude, for example, it really does justify that price, like you said.
Yeah, no question. And you like to see these horses continue on. I mean, it's great to be leading freshman sire. That's great. Right. But to see the 3-year-olds and to see them go on and keep shining at the graded stakes level at 4 and 5, that's just good stuff. And that's a stallion that's really got momentum.
Eric is with us from BloodHorse, bloodhorse.com. Of course, go check out his stuff over there as well. We've got some new sires this year who are getting into the sire side of things rather than running around in circles. Dornick stands out as one of those, of course, the winner of the Belmont Stakes. And, of course, the Haskell last year, back-to-back. One of my favorite scenes last year, Sean, was being in the next to the winner's circle. I should say, I never go in the winner's circle. Try not to. But standing next to the winner's circle at the Haskell. Boy, you would have thought Dornick had never won a race before. How excited that goes! Great.
It's such an exciting atmosphere around there. You had the whole story with Jason Worth and everybody that was involved with the horse, and he always brought big contingent of people to come cheer him on. Anytime Dornock did well, if you were by that winner's circle, it was a good time.
Eric, I wanted to ask you because this is a little bit of a different year. We're going to see fierceness again. We're going to see Sierra Leone again. We're going to see the Derby winner in Mystic Dam. We've already seen him in the Pegasus. But some of these sires, like Dornick, stand out. Does that affect? Does that affect a stud fee when a certain number of 3-year-olds races 4-year-olds instead? Will that affect how Dornick is seen?
No, I don't think so. And we actually we have a pretty good group of freshman sires this year.
I agree.
We do have, we have some of the ones who stood out in the bigger races, and thankfully I'm glad to see them going on and racing a little bit longer.
Sure.
But I mean, we've got classic winner in Dornoch, we got classic winner in National Treasure. They're leading their class this year, $40,000 stud fee for them. And we've got a very, very solid group. They're representing some of the best already, some of the best sires in the business. I always have my notes here because I'm not like one of these guys that can remember pedigrees for 6 generations, right? So
I'm very jealous of those people as well, Eric.
But yeah, it's a gift. It's a gift.
It really is.
But we're seeing a lot of sons of younger stallions who are already proving themselves. I mean, it's a good mix of young stallions that have proven, and the old standbys. I mean, we've got, by good magic, we had Dornoch. You've got Muth. You've got Blazing Sevens. You've got Uncle Mo, represented by Arabian Night, and King's Barnes, who won the Stephen Foster. You got 2 sons of Into Mischief, and we're talking to Elliott Walden. They've got Timberlake there. They're also going to be standing Cogburn, who is the son of Not This Time. And then they're gonna, they're rolling the dice on a son of Justify named Heartland. So I mean, it's an interesting group. It's a good mix. I mean, you got Cogburn, Turf Sprinter, and then you've got your classic representation in National Treasure and Dornoch, and so it's a good mix of stallions, I think, this year.
A horse you didn't mention that is a classic winner is Seize the Gray. Obviously, Gainesway buying the rights there. And Eric, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned you can't remember pedigree back. We all know he's an Arrogate. Obviously, with the untimely and unfortunate passing of Arrogate before he had a full stud career, does it make him more attractive as a stud that Arrogate line does now just only run through his sons?
Well, I think what makes Seize the Gray attractive above and beyond his race record is the fact that Arrogate his runners have come out so strongly. I mean, it really was we wonder what if, right?
Sure.
If Arrogate was still here, because his runners are doing great. They're showing a tremendous amount of talent. I think that helps. Probably helps Seize the Gray a little bit that we don't have an Arrogate anymore, but I think as much he's attractive because of what Arrogate and his progeny have shown so far.
Eric Mitchell, bloodhorse.com. Go see his stuff over there with us. What about a horse like Senor Buscador, right? One of these that, wins the Springboard Mile, goes on to pick off a couple of races overseas, of course, and comes back, wins a classic district race in the U.S. as well. Where do you see him fitting in stuff?
It's a good timing for this show because we just had our stallion show for the media at Lane's End, and we got a chance to go see Senor Buscador and also see More Than Looks. Both of them 2 interesting horses. Senor Buscador now standing at the farm where his sire has been standing, Mineshaft, 2003 Horse of the Year. A very solid stallion, a solid, sire over the years, and now he's got his son Senor Buscador, almost $13 million in earnings, now standing there. And Senor Buscador is a handsome horse. I mean, there's no question about it. He looks like Mineshaft. They showed him, and then they brought Mineshaft out, and you got to see him basically back to back, and they're cut from the same cloth. Lots of bone, lots of substance, lots of leg, a very nice, stretchy, rangy, good-looking horse. I think Lane's End is very happy about having him. And then, More Than Looks, I think, is a very unique horse as well, being by the late More Than Ready, a remarkable stallion, More Than Ready. One of my favorites, personal favorites, long time. I've always impressed with his consistency. He had runners. He was the leading sire for a long time of Breeders' Cup winners. They showed a lot of talent in a lot of different form and a lot of different style. And he was just a remarkable horse. So now you've got More Than Looks. So now you have a horse who is now poised to kind of build and continue on that Hail to Reason line through Halo. It's great to see that line, continue to throw solid horses. So this could be a very important stallion, and he's a good looking horse too. Very much, again, very similar to the Sire. They're not big strapping horses, but you don't have to have a big strapping horse. I mean, More Than Ready was not big, and he was extremely talented, and but just good balance, good solid, athletic, good stride. I mean, these are two good looking candidates that we have.
Well, Eric Mitchell, tell everybody where they should look for you at bloodhorse.com, because I'm fascinated by this conversation, which means other people have to be as well.
Well, I do a lot of news stories. I also do a lot of special sections for the Market Watch section, which appears in the monthly magazine. We do have a new sires, a section about new sires, which profiles some of those new sires. You can find it on bloodhorse.com. Would encourage you to do that. There's a lot of good content out there in the Market Watch section. You can find live foal reports, report of mares bred. You can find a whole lot of stallion statistics that will keep you entertained for hours.
Blood Horse Magazine, another endorsement. How about that? What say you, Sean?
Yeah. Well, Eric, I know you mentioned going out to the Stallion show. Who were you able to talk to about Senor Buscador, More Than Looks? I heard we have some interviews there from there.
Yeah, I talked to Peter Sheehan, the farm manager out there. We did a quick interview with him, get his thoughts on these horses.
To have a son of Mineshaft, a grandson of AP Indy, and he got off the van and he kind of took our breath away. He's a beautiful, tall, scopy horse with plenty of bone, very elegant head to him, very attractive, great balance, and yeah, he was a beautiful looking horse, and his race record speaks for itself. Yeah, he's a fantastic racehorse, and with earnings of almost $13 million. I think he's the highest earning horse that we've ever stood here at Lane's End, and we're very excited to have him.
This could be an important horse, kind of carrying on the Hail to Reason and Halo sire line. Tell us what's appealing about this stallion to you.
Well, he's a fantastic looking stallion. He looks like his sire, More Than Ready. He's got great balance to him. He's got a great shoulder, powerful hip, and he was a very talented racehorse. He had an incredible turn of foot there in the Breeders' Cup Mile. He just blew away that field of, I think there were 8 Grade 1 winners in that race, and he just blew them away. So fantastic athlete with great turn of foot, and he looks exactly like his sire, who was one of the best sire of Breeders' Cup winners. The future's exciting for him.
I guess beating 8 Grade 1 winners is okay. I guess that's all right. I guess that's okay. Oh man!
And he got that right. There were 8. There were 8 Grade 1 winners in that race.
You need to add some of those adjectives to your descriptions, Eric. That was delightful. My goodness. He's a gorgeous horse. Yeah, you need to be doing that, Eric. What are we doing? All right.
I'll work on it.
I appreciate it. Well, that'll be for next time. His name's Eric Mitchell. Go check him out, the Market Report, over at bloodhorse.com, of course, and all the new sire information as well. Keep up on what's going on and meet those babies of those horses that you love to watch run as well. Eric, thanks so much for joining us here on BloodHorse Monday.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Good time.
We'll see you next. Yeah, we'll get you back next time. It'll be great. Plenty to talk about on the breeding side of things, and of course, no better resource than our friends over at BloodHorse and bloodhorse.com. Thank you, Eric. Really do appreciate you. All right, so let's let's wrap the show talking about what's coming up here, Sean. So we are in the teeth of the 50-pointers right now, which is awesome. It's one of the very best parts of the horse racing year is trying to figure this out. I always love, it's nice when you get to the big day for sure. I'll say it 1,000 times on the show. Derby 150, the greatest horse race I've ever attended. It was just wild. But at the same time, these preps and watching just that, like, oh, this horse needs 10 points or this horse needs this or whatever else, it gets real exciting. And this week, of course, continues the 50-point preps. Sean, we are heading to a different part of the country this week, and we're heading to Arkansas for both the Rebel and the Honeybee, of course, 50-pointers on the Derby and Oaks Trail there. Return of some cool horses as well. Who are you looking forward to, especially in that Rebel?
The Rebel, I'm very excited for the big Springboard Mile rematch between Coal Battle and Speed King. Both of them came back out of that race. I mean, who would have expected the Springboard Mile to be one of the key races on the Derby Trail this year?
Oh, the Remsen last year. You never know. You got to pay attention to all of them.
Never know which race it's going to be. And so we'll find out. We're going to see Coal Battle, who came back and won the Smarty Jones after that Springboard Mile. And then Speed King came back and won the Southwest Stakes after that. And so now the two of them are going to meet again. They've got 12 competitors, a full 14-horse field in the starting gate this weekend. So I'm very excited to see how they do in this race. We talked to Ron Moquette with Speed King on the first episode of the podcast. Yeah. Insight there. And, the story of Coal Battle with his small-time connections is going to be a piece on in the BloodHorse Daily, I believe, coming up on Coal Battle and his connections ahead of the Rebel Stakes this weekend. So make sure you check the website for that. But it's going to be such a cool thing to see them re-meet, but then also maybe see some new shooters. Are there any new shooters catching your eyes here?
So Admiral Dennis is back here, right? We just talked about the wins, with Elliott Walden and WinStars, the Son of Constitution. This was one that Brad Cox took back and placed back into allowance company after a fourth place finish in that gun runner, but got him the 2 turns experience again. I'm really fascinated to see, because we already know Brad's going to have all 14 horses in the Kentucky Oaks, right? So we already know that. We're going to move that to the side. It's a joke, Sean. All right. But will he have a Derby runner is still very much up in the air, right? Because John Hancock, love that horse. Can he do it again? Is a legitimate question, right? Can he turn that opponent, that performance back in later on this this cycle? I'm interested in that. Admiral Dennis is another one of these. All of the connections, all of the breeding, all of the things make sense for him to be a great 3-year-old. Is he a 1.25 mile horse? Is he a Pat Day mile horse? I don't know. I'm really fascinated to see him on Saturday.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he runs. And then also the other horse that I'm really excited to see run back. Everybody was talking about Sandman coming out of that Southwest and that horrible start that he had, the fact that he was able to still close and get up for second. If he gets out of the gate this time, what performance are we going to see from him? Are we going to see him run away from the field? Are we going to see where, he's not going to run as well? So I think that's a real key. And we just had Magnitude for Steve Asmussen, who's running in Derby preps. He wasn't having success. He finally breaks through in the Risen Star. That same thing could happen with Tiztastic coming up this weekend. He's been hitting the board in 3 straight Derby preps. Is this the race where he finally breaks through? And then you got the West Coast horses coming in as well.
By the way, the Razorback this year, beautiful as well. We don't preview those on this show, but that is an absolutely spectacular race. As well, how about the Honeybee on the Philly side of things? Grade 3 down there. That's a 1.16 mile race. We see the return of several high-class fillies here in Muhima. Take Charge Milady, who obviously already has significant points on the Oaks Trail as well. Man, Sean, I'm as excited about this one as I am about the Rebel, which is incredible to say.
I know. It's such a great field. I'm excited to see Muhima, what she can do. She drew the rail post position, so it'll be interesting to see how that navigates. Another full field in this spot. You know, Kenny McPeak coming back with Take Charge Milady, trying to get 2 Kentucky Oaks in a row. So we'll see whether or not he can do that. But Muhima, you looked at Brad Cox at the start of the year. Unfortunately, he's lost Immersive, the 2-year-old champion on the Kentucky Oaks Trail, but she'll be back in the summer. But you saw Good Cheer come back just as good as she was at 2. Can Muhima now follow up with that for Shadwell Stables and make it, a Cox versus Cox showdown in the Kentucky Oaks?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm so excited for these races.
It'd be a great,
it's such a cool time of year, man, where you're just trying to figure out who's going to move forward, who's not, which connections. And we heard from Elliott earlier too, just, big connections, but small ones too, right? You can have a great horse in almost any barn. And, it's really, really fun to watch. I love, watching West Omaha last year on the Derby Trail with Larry Demerit and, all the different steps he had to take just to get the horse there and those kinds of things. Very, very fun this time of year. Not last and not least, we got Turfway preps, people, the Cincinnati Trophy on Friday. But I wanted to get into the Battaglia because we're getting the return of a pretty big spot here in First Resort. This one's really interesting to me, Sean, because, that Turfway thing. And in horse racing, I think we love we love the tried, the true, the tested, all those things. And this Turfway path to the Derby, I think we all kind of wanted to go, okay, this is Churchill, and they're doing this, and blah, blah, blah. But then we get Rich Strike, and then we get 2 Phils. And frankly, endlessly last year, I know that he was 40+ to 1, but he looked great in the Ruby. We've had good success coming out of this trail. And we get a runner on Saturday in that race that I think is a really fascinating spot for him to be in, and that's First Resort. Louie Size is making the trip up. This is a horse that won the Kentucky Jockey Club, but before that, they tried him on the turf up there at the Summer Stakes. Baron Rispoli had the ride that day up at Woodbine. Interesting to see kind of a compromise surface here, I guess, for the Owen Hardy folks, or maybe just, he's actually got multiple Derby runners this year, so he's got to spread them around a little bit. But First Resort, I think actually the synthetic and Turfway will play really well for him.
Yeah, and this is such an interesting spot. You don't usually see a horse like him who's already thought of as one of the top Derby contenders,
right?
John Battaglia. So that's a real testament to just how far along their Derby prep series has come in the last little bit. You even saw, I believe the horse that ran second, the Risen Star, Chunk of Gold, was coming out of the Leonata Stake, the race that's the kind of the prelude to this one. So you're starting to see where, that Turfway form is really being more respected on the road to the Kentucky Derby. And you look at a horse like First Resort, he's got 10 points already for the Derby. He gets 20 here if he wins. That puts him at 30. That puts him at a nice, comfortable position going into the final round of prep races where you can kind of pick and choose your spot. So I think this is a great spot for him. And, we'll see whether or not he runs to it and first start back.
The timing of this works well, too, because it's 5 weeks before the major preps on April 1st, right? Or on April 5th, excuse me. And so it is the first Saturday. Yeah, but just the having that time as well, so they can make a decision. Do they run in the Ruby, which is 5 weeks before the Derby, or do they go to the Bluegrass or something else that's 4 weeks ahead, something like that? So this is actually an interesting spot for him to land. As we heard from Frank Angst, I guess it was on the first episode, that first start back at 3 really does matter on the colt side if you're going to win the Kentucky Derby. So Saturday, not a small ask here, I think, for First Resort. But I do think it's telling. Louie Size is going to spend the day at Turfway on Saturday. I think that means something.
Yeah, definitely.
There you go. Well, he is Sean Collins. We want to thank Eric Mitchell. We want to thank Elliott Walden. Behind the scenes, a guy named Frank Angst for producing the effort as well. From Mediania Alta, Puerto Rico, my name is Louie Rabaut. He's Sean Collins in snowy Louisville. We'll be back at it together next week for BloodHorse Monday. We hope you'll join us for episode 4. We'll talk to you then.
The BloodHorse is dedicated to the improvement of thoroughbred breeding and racing for over 100 years. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and save BloodHorse Monday on all your platforms. For the latest news, analysis, and insights, visit us at bloodhorse.com.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.